Good afternoon, everyone. We've got Dr. Samuel Gordon with us today, and he welcome Samuel to Radio BOL.
Thanks, Rabia. Thanks for having me.
Dr. Samuel is an astrologist in Chinese astrology, planetary astrology. He's an expert based in Melbourne. Today, he's going to talk about what is astrology, and we are here to learn from him and see what we can benefit from astrology. So, Dr. Samuel, welcome to Radio Bowl.
Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So, Sam, what is astrology?
Well, astrology is basically just study of the stars. Astro means stars, ology means study. And it's basically, in a nutshell, just a study of life cycles we move through. And I think when we look at charts or birth charts or what's known as natal charts, there's just a snapshot of where we are at that time. And usually for a reading, we go by the whole chart. We look at the whole sequence. Mm-hmm. And most people will be familiar with the sun sign. But that's basically what it is. The word zodiac actually means circle of animals. So it's basically just a snapshot of where we are at that time, and that is the pivotal point of what we look at when we look at a birth natal chart. We can look at, there's so many areas we can look at. Just to give you an example, most people who usually come for a chart is basically they usually have a crisis of some kind, or most people, like we were just talking about before, want to understand their vocation, their destiny.
So when you say, what is a chart in astrology?
Sorry, can you say that again, Rabia?
When you say chart, what is chart in astrology?
A chart is considered what we call the 12 signs of the 12 signs of the zodiac and the 12 houses. So when we look at a chart, we need data. So we need birth date, time, place, and the place of where you're born. Mm-hmm. And that's what we look at. So it's going to be a configuration. If I had an example here, I could show you, but it would be a planetary astrology will have planets, and Chinese astrology will have animal signs like year of the rat, but it will all be in ancient Chinese figures and the yin and yang counterparts of that. So because I'm just saying I practice Chinese and planetary astrology, so I usually look off, when I look at charts, I look at both charts. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how can we learn from it? How can we make a shift in our lives from astrology?
It depends on, I personally think one of the greatest things astrology has to offer is understanding your authentic self. And I think the real importance of that is that can really pinpoint us to what our destiny actually really is, because I think everyone who comes to this planet, so to speak, has a very specific role for themselves which no one else can fulfill. And I think astrology really offers a lot of clues and insights to what that answer is. Mm-hmm. But having said that, it's more it's not going to give you a direct yes or no, what am I going to do, but it's going to pinpoint a lot of indications of directions you can go. So Astro usually can really reveal our talents, our hidden talents, stuff that we haven't, I guess, shown to the world. It can get revealed in the charts. Maybe things we haven't thought about ourselves, which may direct us into our career or whatever that may be. So mm-hmm. I think Astro on that site can give a lot of clarity to certain things we're going through in terms of either.
How is it different with tarot card reading, astrology and tarot card reading?
I think Astro's more specific. I think, let's put it this way. I think Tarot's more right-brained. So I think, and astrology can be considered, I guess, a little bit more left. So it can get a little bit more mathematical, so to speak. And when tarot, I think, is a lot more intuitive and symbolic. But having said that, it's funny you say that, actually, because tarot and astrology used to be one and the same art.
Oh, is
Like, people who usually practice astrology would understand tarot, numerology, and what they call Kabbalah.
okay.
So that'd be the four magical traditions, and you'd have to be master of them all. Because a lot of the symbols in the tarot cards are very similar to the astrological cycles. They all coincide. They're kind of one and the same art in a way. So they were considered never really separate. That's a good question, actually.
Because I recently myself went to a tarot card reading. It was out
Yeah.
of curiosity, and I never believed in it. So that's
Yeah.
why I thought, I was like, I'll ask this question. How is it related?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't do predictive astrology. I mean, I can do it, but I kind of choose not to do it. So I really focus on the birth natal chart. But you can do predictive stuff, whereas you can ask a question and then read a chart and it can give you an answer.
Okay.
So the practical side of things is definitely there. They call that horary astrology, where you ask a question and it can give you an answer. But usually when I do the charts, I do the natal and I'll do the solar return, which is just your birthday until the next birthday. So that can be the predictive event for the year of things that can come up for you, maybe challenges or more mundane things that can happen. And you look into that. So it can be whether you're going to, I guess, buy a house or whether you're going to get that kind of job promotion or things like that. You can see that usually in a solar return chart, which I usually do in conjunction with natal charts. But natal charts, the birth natal chart, like the Chinese astrology chart, is specific for mapping out or understanding because I personally think astrology is an inner zodiac. It's all within. It's not about planets out there. Because great psychologists or counselors use astrology because all the planets relate to archetypes. And if you've read the works or any works of the collected works of Carl Jung, he always used astrology. Not many people know it, but he's always giving you hints about it. Because you can, when people come in for an astro reading and they're in certain crisis, you just look at the transits or what they call the progressions, and you can usually see why they're in the state they're in. But the great thing about it, when people do actually have a specific problem, say a crisis of some kind or a trauma, it's one of the great things about astro is it gives you a timing, because astrology is one of the great things about astrology is timing. And you can, it's usually not forever, and it can be really refreshing for people to hear that when they're going through a deep change, deep transformational point or pivotal point in their lives. It can really and it can give you keys to understanding of what you need to do to move through it as well.
I have a question for you. Once you get your astrology chart done for a year, from one birth year to the next year,
Yep.
it changes over months, or is it like when you make a shift, when you make a change after the astrology chart done, of course it's going to change the next year as well?
So like I said in the beginning, the birth chart's that snapshot and that point of time. And then you have the planetary transits, the planets that move around that birth natal chart, which can indicate that's the change. That stimulates change when those planets aspect or they come into contact with other planets. They can create, that's when and you usually feel it on the inner. So sometimes there can be external circumstances, but to answer your question, it's always changing, but you always still have your birth natal chart, which is the core.
Which is the base for you.
Yeah. Sorry?
which the name is the base for you to work on.
Which is the base.
Yeah, natal
Yeah,
charts.
I work off the natal. And in
Yeah.
Chinese astrology, we don't call it natal charts. In Chinese astrology, it's called the four pillars chart, the four pillars of destiny. So most people know they're born in year of the dragon or the rat or that kind of thing. But there's four pillars that run through that, and then life cycles you move through. It's a little bit different, but I like using both because they reveal certain different things. You can see, and they usually kind of they you can see things in one chart. Sometimes you can't see in others. You know, I'm
So
a
you
Gemini, so I have two things going on at the same time. Makes it a bit easier for me, you know.
so what between Chinese astrology and astrology? How do you differentiate between the two?
How do I differentiate between planetary and Chinese?
Between the two, Chinese and
Um,
planetary astrology.
yeah, I think planetary astrology is very good on a psychological level. I think it's a little bit deeper, whereas I think Chinese astrology is more. It's not that it doesn't have psychological aspects, but it reveals things more on a little bit more of a mundane level.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you can see things a little bit clearer in terms of, well, it's not, they're just very different. It's hard to explain, but Chinese astrology is very element based. So it's based on the five elements we talk about in Chinese medicine, like fire element, earth, water, metal, and those animal branches, and they all relate to different elements as well. The animal branches, like I said before, the rooster, the rat, and the dragon. And then you look at all how those elements clash and combine, and you can tell whether if someone's got a clear flow with their chart, it rolls quite well, their destiny, so to speak. But having said that, a lot of people ask me that question of, oh, I've seen a lot over the years from doing charts. People have so-called easy charts and they don't have challenges, usually really don't make anything of themselves in life. There's
Why?
something, the more challenging someone aspects or the more difficult a chart is, I think people tend to make their lives, how do you say it? They usually make something out of themselves in life because they've had these, major upheavals that have forced them to grow,
Mm-hmm.
to transform. Whereas some people, when they have the easy flow, they just kind of they just kind of drift. Everything tends to come so easy, they take it for granted. Whereas the people who've had to struggle a bit, really creates their own character and makes them who they are.
Makes them unique.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of astrology. Everyone is absolutely unique. No one is the same.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. And even say if people are born on the same day, at similar times or the same time, it still doesn't mean they're going to have the same life. You still can't ignore the fact, the environment and the place and where people grow up. That family foundation and all that kind of thing obviously is going to shape their destiny as well.
Yep, everyone's journey is different in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm more interested to know, like, at a deeper level, transformative power, fixed signs. How do we use those fixed signs, which are sun signs?
Sorry, you broke up a bit there, Rabia.
How Yep, how do we use these sun signs to transform ourselves?
Ah, that's the real key, isn't it? I think transformation will come from a number of different things in a chart. Because the sun sign, how we say you're an Aries, you're a Cancer, you're a Gemini or whatever. to me, it's so general. There can be a lot of different planets aspecting the sun sign that can make things change for us. For example, well, speaking of transformation, if you were born, say, an Aryan sun next to the planet Pluto, Pluto really rules transformation, and Pluto as a planet or an archetype rules the underworld, so it likes digging underneath, which means that it rules psychology and subjects like that. It likes going underneath the surface of things. So if you're a Pluto sun, naturally you'll be probably quite a deep person and be into the concept of transformation, just as a basic example. Another sign, I mean, I guess Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. So a lot of Scorpion suns or Scorpionic type people tend to be into a lot of the, they tend to make good psychologists or counselors because they're naturally like digging beneath the surface of things, going down into the depth.
What about Cancer?
Cancerian?
Yep.
Cancerian are very sensitive. They're homebodies, and it's a very protective sign. My son's a Cancerian, and like he's got quite a few planets. He's a Cancerian sun. He's got Jupiter in Cancer and Mercury in Cancer as well.
Okay.
So he's got quite a lot of Cancer. He's got a lot of water. Like he's got a Scorpio rising. So the ascendant point on the chart is actually quite significant because that determines the personality you project out into the world. But the Cancerian sign is deeply sensitive and protective, and more of a homebody.
When you say homebody,
Staying at home.
Okay.
Family orientated.
Family oriented.
Yeah, family orientated. Generally, yeah. And I think all water signs are deep. Cancerian's water. It's not like a Scorpio water because there's mutable, fixed, and cardinal water, and Cancerian's cardinal water. It's not fixed like Scorpio. Fixed energies can be very intense and hard to change patterns. They really fixed people. They can really be stuck in stuff and really hard to let go, particularly of emotion or of a trauma that's happened to them. It can be difficult. Yeah.
Yep, that's true. The same goes for Pisces. It's also water. Pisces is water too.
Yeah, that's right. Pisces is mutable water. So when they say mutable, it's more adaptive to change. And the Piscean energy is ruled by Neptune, so it's quite easy for Piscean people to escape and disappear. They're very sensitive and intuitive to the mystical realm.
Yep.
Yeah, it rules the oceans. They usually like water, or they love things like poetry. And actually, deeply Piscean people make great mediums and tarot readers because they can easily connect to the other side, the other world. Yeah, they have that incredible ability to do that. Make great musicians, pulling things out of the ethers. They're incredible like that. Because music moves people. It's like another dimension, music. That's why it's so powerful.
The creators.
Makes creativity, very creative.
I've got a question here from one of the audience. She's asking, what in astrology, what is other world?
Other world?
Yeah. In astrology, what is the other world?
What is the other world? That's a very deep question. I'm more of a Gemini, so I'll give you an intellectual answer about it. Did she mean when I was talking about the Piscean, the mystical realms, otherworldly, that kind of thing? I think it's more like, how do we talk about it? I think it's nature. There's a saying one of the great philosophers said by Schelling is nature's invisible spirit and spirit's invisible nature. So I think the other world really is nature, and it's all about being able to tune into what they call chi and prana.
Okay.
Prana in yogic philosophy, chi in Chinese philosophy it's otherworldly. It's a different energy, and technology can't pick it up. It's not sensitive enough to pick it up. It takes a well fine-tuned. We talk about the other world, so to speak. Piscean people can appear very angelic, like they're an angel or a diva, or if you want to call it something like that. They look very graceful in a way, but also like not from here. They can appear like that. Yeah.
There is another question that come up. Is there any supreme intelligence?
Is there any supreme intelligence?
In astrology?
Well, I'd say the cosmos is supreme intelligence, because I think the art of it is you're reading the cycles of the celestial bodies. So in a way, if you can tune into it, they're giving answers. Everything's kind of accounted for. That's why the ancients spent so many years studying it. Actually, originally, astro means star. So astrology used to be based on fixed stars, not planets, like star systems.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the cosmos is mental when you get into it on a deeper level, and I think astrology really is that extreme intelligence in the universe.
Can astrology help us to control situations? My voice is echoing.
Yeah. Can astrology what? Sorry?
Can we use astrology to control our situations?
Absolutely. But I think, like everything, it's got to fall back psychologically. I think, there's that argument, when you get a chart done, is this going to be my fate? Is this deterministic? And I don't think that's the case. I think when you understand certain aspects in your chart, they don't have that control over you. Like some people will say, especially the Chinese, when you do a Chinese chart, they look at something like, that's bad luck. It's like it's the end of your life. You're finished, They'll say, oh, my God, you got a clash in the house of the spouse. You're destined to have a lousy relationship. That's not the case. And there can be certain aspects that, sorry?
So how do we manage that if it comes a situation where we're seeing a clash?
Yeah, well, how you manage it is, I think it's just it's a period of growth. I think clash cycles or difficult aspects are all periods of growth. They're not negative. And if you understand how to work through it, particularly from a psychological level or however it is you want to do it, you can be so creative working through these things. Having a clash in the house of the spouse, so to speak, doesn't mean it's going to, you may have a challenging relationship, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a lousy one. That can be a relationship that stimulates a lot of growth. And if you're deeply connected and you're in self-worth or have self-esteem, it won't rattle you, But as well, when you probably don't understand yourself so well and you go through these kind of things, it can definitely be, it can be heavy. Or you can attract something until you learn a lesson.
It's learning lessons. There is another. There is another question. What is time in astrology? Does it change when we travel to other planets? As it's changing when we travel to other planets?
When we travel to other planets or countries?
She's asking planet.
Planets.
Yeah.
I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
But time is very. Sorry.
What is time in astrology?
What is time?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really deep question. I think time, well, there's sidereal time and there's psychological time. There's different times. I think astrology is ruled by sidereal time,
Mm.
which is ruled by planetary motion. That's the only way I think I can answer that. Yeah, I mean, the time is ruled by the timing of astrology would be in relation to planetary motion, and the planets are known as the wanderers. So the planets move, and yeah, I'm not quite sure how to answer that because that's a very deep question. That the question of time can be a very difficult one, but astrology is really based on sidereal time, which is different kind of from the timing we have here.
Hmm. Apart from all this astrology, I have a question for you, Sam. The question is, you're a doctor of Chinese medicine. You're an acupuncturist as well.
Hmm.
How did you get into astrology? What motivated you to get into this, using medicine and astrology together as a combination to treat patients?
Um, I got into well, I think it was back in 2002 when I just started studying acupuncture. I studied Chinese astrology, and I wanted to study astrology more than acupuncture actually. But I mean, I love acupuncture and herbal medicine. But I wanted to do it because I was very interested in how because Chinese astrology is one of the 8 limbs of Chinese medicine alongside with feng shui, which a lot of people don't know. So all doctors back in the day used it. They all understood astrology, even in the Western civilization. It wasn't that long ago, maybe in the Renaissance period, when all doctors had to study astrology as part of and because, for instance, when you understand the medical astrology, it was very critical. Like around eclipses and things like this, the eclipse period or between waves, you wouldn't get surgery, or you wouldn't get surgery on a full moon because there was high chance of hemorrhage and stuff like this. So I was very interested in all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to understand a lot of my patients on a deeper level. I wanted to have something to offer that could give them some kind of deeper understanding apart from the headache they may be experiencing or the infertility or the existential meltdown they might be having at that point in time. And I
That's
think
very
it has always been very accurate on that level.
That's very interesting to know. Eclipse, because we, in my culture as well, eclipse is considered when a woman, for example, is expecting a baby.
Mm.
When there is an lunar eclipse, she is being asked not to do anything, just sit back, not to do any sort
Mm.
of activity. It's going to affect the baby, and it does.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, eclipses, I think around eclipses, I think firstly, if people are born near eclipses, they're very sensitive to eclipse cycles.
Hmm.
They can really feel it, like when eclipses come, the eclipse periods. But also, yeah, I mean, there's been certain indications where it can be very dangerous to have, depending on what's aspecting the eclipse at the time and all that kind of thing. It can deeply affect the birth or birthing process. Absolutely, yeah.
One last question: how do you relate astrology and quantum physics?
And quantum physics. Did
Hmm.
I hear that right? I'm not a physicist, so I can't really answer that question. But I think there's been a lot of deep research into astrological cycles in
Hmm.
terms of like there's a fantastic book by a Harvard scholar. I think his name was Richard Tarnas, who wrote a book called Cosmos and Psyche, where he went back through all historical periods, um, analyzing astrological events, keeping like a chronological um, table of or the whole book is just about the historical events around certain planetary configuration and the world events around them, which is a pretty amazing read, actually, because especially with what we're going through now, this year in 2020, really hasn't happened for 100 years. So,
question out of curiosity, did you see in your chart, did you see in any of the charts the year 2020 it's going to be like this?
I knew it'd be. I knew it'd be really big. I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know how it would play out, and it's not finished yet. I think it's going to get. I think it's going to get a little more difficult up until Christmas, and possibly up until the end of January. But I had no idea. I had no idea it would play out like this. All I knew was there's 3 major planetary configurations, and a few retrograde planet cycles that were all happening this year. So, right now we're in that Mars retrograde period, and I think that the Saturn-Pluto cycle was very significant this year in terms of, and that's what we're experiencing now, power and control.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the 2 archetypes of those planets.
It's a play of power and control right now.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And but I didn't in my wildest dreams think, this virus or something like this would come out. But viruses are very ruled by Neptune in astrology.
Mm-hmm.
And Neptune is anything that can virus, things like this. Viruses dissolve boundaries, so it's very easy for them to get through things. And Neptune kind of rules all those sinister type things in a way. It's the negative side of that planetary archetype. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna strap ourselves in, I think, for a little more this year.
Yeah.
But I think all this kind of thing is as negative as some things may seem. I think it's good, because I think any change is a good change.
I believe any crisis, when you go through a crisis, there is a period of growth after that. That's my personal.
Absolutely.
That's my personal. Regardless of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sim, for your time today on Radio BOL.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Accepting my invite, and I think we should continue on different topics as a series on this channel if you are happy. And I'm sure our audience would like to hear from you more often.
I'm happy to do that. Like if someone wants something to talk about specifically, we can, for sure.
Definitely. Thank you so much once again. On behalf
You're
of
welcome, Rabia.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
See ya.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.